Tom Spring here with SC Media at RSA Conference 2024. I'm here with Dor Segal with Silverfort Security, and we're going to be talking about a session that he gave yesterday on how to, you give people a little bit of an introduction, very big, broad introduction in terms of who you are and also what your research is about.
So my name is Dor Segal, and I work in Silverfort for the past 4 years, and I specialize in identity research and identity vulnerabilities. And yesterday I did talk about how to bypass modern authentication to SSO in the context where our story begins, where an adversary performs and achieves a man in the middle.
So that is the prerequisite for your research and the abuse of the token session, which we're going to get to.
Right.
And yes, step us through how an attack could take place, and we're gonna assume that the communication between the client and the server is insecure, in that there is already an established adversary who's able to sniff out that traffic.
Right. So when a determined adversary achieves the man in the middle, there are plenty of ways to achieve a man in the middle, not just phishing, because FIDO actually really eliminates the phishing, but there are already many other types of men in the middle, such as spoofing and state actors that does a lot of trouble when we already know that stealing certificates is a tactic to perform man in the middle.
Okay, so they've established that that position, and the victim in this case is going to be using their company's single sign-on technology for a secure connection to their company's resources or a resource. Can you talk to me a little bit about how that single sign-on takes place, and how FIDO does protect that single sign-on, but how your research shows that may not be enough to protect the entire communication chain?
So on a typical use case, a user authenticates to the identity provider, such as Entra ID SSO. And then when the authentication ends, a session token is granted, so the user can use it and approach the web application and access the application itself.
So again, just to be clear, FIDO protects the SSO handshake, if we can call it that.
Right.
But your research shows where there is a token that is provided to. Here, you gotta explain it.
So once the authentication session ends, there is a session token that the user can use to access the web application. So it takes that and gives it to the application itself, so it can get the access the user wants.
And this is where things get really interesting.
Right.
That token, as your research showed, can be
reused,
and the adversary can actually take that token and be able to have a persistent access to the platform using token refresh.
So imagine two different boxes. One box is the identity provider and the other is the web application. The man in the middle doesn't have to occur on the identity provider, which is protected by FIDO. It can occur afterwards on the web application context itself. And then the adversary may steal the session token on the application.
So what's at risk? What's at risk? What type of crown jewels does that adversary have access to if they are able to essentially create a persistent access to that session?
Well, it depends on the application. For instance, the adversary may read and send emails on your behalf, or access your Slack account or your Azure Management Portal and all your resources.
Okay, nothing good.
Nothing good. The damage may be very significant.
Okay, so so I want to keep this simple, but I want to also talk about the mitigation and why this is happening and how companies can protect themselves from this type of event taking place on their network.
Right. So token binding is a feature that was presented in 2018, and it allows the device to be bound to the session token by binding a special signature in the underlying TLS handshake. And this special signature that can be bound to the session token that will later be granted to the user.
So that session token, where is the binding taking place? It's taking place between.
It can be both between the identity provider and the third-party web application.
So if an adversary does have an establishment in the middle attack or a presence within that communications, does this binding prevent them from accessing that token?
Yes, because the adversary must recreate another TLS handshake in another session, and the TLS session will be totally different.
So why aren't we? So you said this binding option has been around for some time. How come we're talking about your research today if the problem was solved several years ago?
Right. So Chrome really dropped support because of a low adoption rate, because it was very hard to actually implement it, and there was not much token binding, and there was not much awareness taken in place. But I think the world is ready to actually reuse it, and Microsoft implemented token binding as a conditional access.
Hold on a second.
Okay,
you're selling yourself short here. Your research last year that you disclosed to Microsoft was I mean, Microsoft isn't saying thank you,
right?
But your research came out and it was shared with Microsoft last summer.
Right.
And
and then Microsoft claimed it's not a vulnerability. Well, it is not. It is an attack surface, and the damage from it can be significant, and we already have seen it. But 6 months later, Microsoft released a preview of token protection, which is basically a variant of token binding.
Okay, so that's in their Edge browser, correct?
Right. Edge browser is currently the only browser that supports token binding.
Okay, so if you're interested in protecting your network and your computer systems from this type of an attack,
right.
Talk a little bit about what you need to do to make sure that you're configured to be able to take advantage of token binding.
So first, you need to understand your threat attribution. You need to, when you design your authentication method, you need to understand what is that you're doing, and you need to protect from the weakest link, which is specifically the SSO. And when you add more and more authentication methods, it doesn't really necessarily mean that you are more protected. You need to understand that you rely on the weakest link of the chain.
So the weakest link of the chain. Okay, so let me ask the question again. How do you protect yourself from this type of attack? Is it a configuration issue? Is it a lack of a piece of a puzzle that you need to add?
I really recommend that in sensitive cases you use your modern authentication directly, and do not use SSO, or in any case change the default FIDO library when you develop your application and validate the session token that is being used by that was given by the identity provider.
Okay. Well, I think we've managed to get through this research in a very simple way. Dor has a very detailed presentation, blog post, research that is well worth a look. And I just want to thank you very much for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your show.
Thank you, Tom.